Linda from Poseidon Equine. We are a company that specialises in horse gut health. And whilst we manufacture digestive supplements, we're also very committed to educating as many horse owners as we can about the importance of managing and feeding for good gut health. So this video today will touch on the role of the gut, and in particular looking at the role of the gut in housing the trillions of bacteria and microbiome in it that absolutely impact on your horse's gut health. So what is gut health? Gut health is actually just a simple term to say how well is your horse's gut working in the following areas. How well is it digesting and absorbing feed? Is your horse's gut providing that really important barrier that protects your horse from so many unwanted problems such as pathogens, bacteria, and toxins entering your gut, your horse's gut? And when that happens, we say a horse has a leaky gut. But also your horse's gut has to house the trillions of bacteria who have such a major role to play. And we're going to look into that into lots of detail today. If we talk about the horse's gut, we're talking about the foregut and the hindgut. And you can see how big it is, and it's over 30 metres long. So when something goes wrong with the gut, it has huge potential for problems. So we want it working well at all times, because when it doesn't work well, it can impact on not only the way your horse looks, the way it feels, the way it performs, and its overall health. So if we look at this role, third role of the gut, which is about housing the trillions of bacteria, of which we only know about 2% at the moment. And there's other parts of the microbiome that we don't know much about in terms of yeast and fungi, protozoa, other areas, but we're really focusing on the bacteria today and how they absolutely impact on your horse's digestion, their immune function, and their behaviour. They are the foundation for everything. When we think about that large digestive tract, it's important to understand that each part of the horse's system has its own microorganism community. Now, again, we don't know a lot. We're learning more and more. The stomach, for example, which is very acidic, it will have a different pH than other parts of the horse's digestive tract. And so it has its own microorganism that will survive and thrive in the pH that the stomach is meant to be. Now, every horse has a very different microorganism community, and that can happen from birth, which is really important to understand when we start talking about changing the horse's gut. The time that it takes and the strategies it takes will depend for every horse, because they will have a different microorganism community to start off with. We know that there is the greatest diversity in the hindgut. We still don't know lots. And a lot of our focus at this stage has been around bacteria. So let's talk about how this all works. Now, horses and bacteria have this very mutual relationship. The horse says, I'll give you a safe place, a warm place to live, and I will give you food. And then in return, the bacteria says to the horse, I will take that food and I'll make some really great byproducts to keep the horse alive. The thing to understand about bacteria is the competitive nature of it, and it establishes from birth. That's why it's so important to understand gut bacteria now. If you're a horse breeder and you can get your head around understanding gut bacteria and you can start feeding for gut health with the broodmare, then you're setting that foal up to a great or a much healthier life, because they've got a great bacterial profile to start with. We want lots of good bacteria at all times. The bad bacteria will take any opportunity to then outcompete the good bacteria, and that happens in so many ways. It can be as simple as if you want to change your horse's diet and you bring a new feed source in and you introduce it too quickly, it can stress the gut bacteria and provide a great opportunity for the bad bacteria to take over. It's a very competitive relationship, and the bad bacteria can manipulate the environment for their survival. We know there is both good and bad residing in the hindgut, and it's all about the balance. We want to keep the pH at the level that the good bacteria can thrive, because they're the ones that will take your fibre and ferment it and create great byproducts, and also then reduce inflammation, which means less pain and less energy that your horse has to spend on dealing with an inflammatory response. From my experience of working with thousands of horses, my own horses, I just wish I knew about the importance of gut bacteria years and years and years ago. So many of our horses are performing in pain, which can show up in so many ways. I mean, even girthiness can be linked to poor gut health and inflammation. Now, the bad bacteria love starch. We want ideally starches to be digested in the small intestine. And for example, that's why we like to feed cooked or extruded grain. So the enzymes can get to the starch easier and have it taken up then and not getting to the first part of the hindgut where they feed the bad bacteria. The bad bacteria will then ferment it really quickly and create lots of lactic acid. And if there's too much lactic acid, then it will change the pH of the gut and the good bacteria can't keep up. When the gut becomes more acidic, then so many problems can happen. Firstly, that you now reduce the number of good bacteria, and they're the ones that will give you the great feed conversion plus all the other important byproducts such as your B vitamins. Also, that means that the gut wall can get irritated and inflamed and damaged, and you now get what's called leaky gut. So things can now enter through the gut wall and create inflammation. Good bacteria can die and release things called endotoxins, which can now enter the system and cause problems. And it's even been linked to laminitis. So you can see this horse here, it's a classic, poor gut health. Now, there are other issues involved that, we need to look at, which can have a major impact. At the end of the day, gut health is absolutely foundation. We have to get it right. So let's talk about the good bacteria. Now, they are a diverse group of bacteria. We're learning more and more about them. Now, because they're diverse, that means that we need to feed a diverse range of fibre and ideally choose fibre that's low in starch. So fibre includes, your hays, chaffs, legume hulls, beet fibres, fibre that requires bacteria to ferment them in the hindgut. And the good bacteria also keep that gut wall intact. And think of it like bricks in a wall, and in keeping, there's got to be lots of mortar in between to keep the bricks together. The gut wall has to be intact so it can't let unwanted things entering and only lets good things going through. We'll talk a lot about the balance, and it's very much about the balance. We want the good bacteria to outcompete the bad bacteria. Now, bacteria, when you're looking at re-establishing or rebalancing your horse's gut bacteria, it can take up to 12 months. So we have to be really patient. And the idea will be that eventually you have this gut that's so resilient that if there is a stress response, for example, an injury, an illness, or if you've gone away competing, or you've been transporting your horse, and we know that has a negative impact on the gut bacteria, you have enough good gut bacteria to counteract that stress response. So the gut becomes resilient, the ability to bounce back. And that's where products like Digestive EQ have been used by so many customers, because they find that adding that support through the supplement, they're giving their horse's gut some extra support. So it's all about the balance. We want to be feeding the good bacteria at all time and not giving the bad bacteria any power. This balance of bacteria is absolutely up to us as horse owners. We can improve it or we can make it worse. So it's not just about adding Digestive EQ, for example, but it's about looking at what are we feeding our horse? Are we feeding enough fibre? Are we feeding the right bacteria? How do we manage stress? For example, if you've just bought a new horse, try and find out what the horse is being fed so you can make some dietary changes really slowly, because too often we hear of somebody buying a new horse and then saying, oh, it's not the horse that I thought I was getting, it's stressy, it's anxious, it's fence walking, etc. We need to understand that stress will reduce the number of good bacteria. The good bacteria are the ones that give you the behaviour that you want, the appetite, the calmness, the trainable energy. If you reduce the numbers of good bacteria, we'll get a horse that is stressed and anxious. It may have loose manure, maybe having bouts of colic, etc., etc. So we have to be always thinking, am I managing and feeding for good gut health at all times? So if we keep that really simple and summarising that, again, it's about healthy bacteria equals a healthy gut. It means you have a gut that can digest food well. It's got a really great intact gut wall, which means it's this huge barrier and an immune organ. And then we have this great balance of healthy bacteria. You will create a healthy horse. Bacteria keep horses alive. Let's make sure our horses have the right bacteria and the right level of good bacteria. It's the balance that's really important. And so many behavioural issues and training issues and health issues, appetite issues come back to the fact that the horse doesn't have enough good bacteria. We need to increase that profile at all times because good bacteria create the byproducts that we want. If you have any questions, please remember to contact us. You can email us at any time. You can visit our website. You can message us on Facebook. You can contact us on Instagram, or you can join our Facebook group.